and welcome again to my show, Searching for Integrity. My name really is John Smith, and I'm searching for people with integrity. Why? Because our country suffers from IDD, integrity deficit disorder. We have as our guest today Mr. Jim North and his book being launched fairly soon, I hope. Title of the book is Unsung Heroes, Wear No Capes, and 12 Essential Virtues for an Extraordinary Life. Sounds like a lot to talk about. What do you think, Jim?
It is a lot to talk about. It's a big thing, I mean, this is what you're all about, with your searching for integrity theme. My story locks right in with yours, I believe, and I'm very happy to be on your show.
Well, good. I did want to ask you a few mechanical things about your book. For instance, were you prepared to launch it and then it was delayed, or what happened with it?
Well, I mean, I'm in the final stages. It's about to go into the phase of production. So it's probably going to be June-ish before it's actually published. But there's a lot of stories in my book, but the theme is unsung heroes and the things that personify one.
Right.
It's not like everyone always gets credit for the good things that they do. And we shouldn't really seek the credit for it, I think, is one of the points. But we should do what we do for the right reasons, whether we get the applause for that or not. And anyone can be an unsung hero if you are just willing to be a helper of others. That's the way I look at it. We want to be a helper. And if we're willing to do that, I think it draws more out of us than we ever could have drawn out of ourselves otherwise. So, if you're self-serving, you're not going to get really very far. But if you're really focused in on being all that you can be to someone else, and that the 12 virtues that I explore, although there's more virtues than what I've explored, but courage and hope and love and friendship and optimism and things like that. Hope is a big thing. So these are the things that I explore. They're the things that separate us and take us to the next level. You want to be about other people, not just yourself. I have a saying that we make a mistake by defining ourselves by who we are rather than who we are to others. So that's the theme of the book. And there's a lot of stories in it.
Well, your background gives you a great knowledge of how you're going to do it right. And you've got quite a background. What's some of the good parts of the background that you share with people?
Yeah, I've gotten my master's degree at the University of Oklahoma, and my undergrad is at the University of Oklahoma. It's in professional writing, but I've done journalism, but I've also been in the corporate world, in leadership and management. I've also been in areas of service to other people, as far as I've been a pastor, I've been a kids pastor. So really, I have a convergence really of all these into what I'm doing right now. And this book is meant to kind of really wrap things together and craft meaningful messages for other people to benefit from.
Good. Those are all up and up kind of talks that you give yourself all the time. I give myself talks all the time. And sometimes it's not always positive.
Yeah. Well, self-reflection is a good thing. And I really try to be that way, I mean, I really do want to examine myself and be reflective and introspective. because that way you can really wrap what you do into who you are and to others and your own mission and life. And we really want to be connective, right?
Yeah, sure. And noticed.
Hmm.
Let me ask you this. Have you always been in Oklahoma?
No, I was born in Michigan. I was raised in Ohio and Michigan, back and forth quite a bit because of what my dad did. But once I got married at the ripe age of 22, we moved to Oklahoma, and we've been here most of the time since.
Like,
So it's home now. Oklahoma is home. So
I like
yeah,
Oklahoma. I was raised some there.
you
And
were raised some in Oklahoma?
yeah,
Okay.
I think that we went from Tennessee to Oklahoma, and that was when I was about 7 years old.
Hmm.
And then we moved to Dallas, probably in about another 7, 8 years. And then I finished the sophomore semester and did the junior senior thing. It was hard on me because I was a wrestler and I was always trying to make weight. And I got down
Okay.
to Texas, and they didn't even have in the schools. They didn't have any wrestling in the schools then. Yeah,
Really?
isn't that crazy? Yeah, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing.
It is. Um, I saw that with your credentials now. Which do you you come with your business cards or your non-business cards? Is there one that you give to people the first time or the second time? What do you rely on in terms of, say, being a pastor?
What do I rely on?
Huh?
Um, I don't really talk that much about my experience as a pastor. It was a couple years, but my experience as a kids pastor, though,
Uh-huh.
exploded. And that was not something I expected. And it became far bigger than I ever imagined.
Yeah,
And so I learned so much from becoming creative with a theme and
uh-huh.
being able to put that out there to kids. Kids see through. And
Sure.
so you got to be genuine
Right.
and honest. And that's another one of my 12 virtues is honesty.
Sure.
Because I learned early on, in my younger years, as a teenager, I as much lie to you as look at you. But that all changed for me. And when I
Mhm.
became 18, 19 years old, and I really had a transformation. And
Mhm.
I learned, what, I will never, ever lie to anyone about anything, or ever say anything about someone else that's not true. This is an
Mhm.
essential virtue, and it's one of the 12 that I tackle in my
Mhm.
book.
Mhm.
So,
I,
really, these are the things that I want to be remembered by is these kinds of virtues, because they're what takes us the farthest in life. And of course, that story in Ripley is one that there's the virtue of friendship that you can look at in that
right.
story, and courage and love and hope and all kinds of these things you can look at with the Ripley story that I talk about in my book.
Mhm. Once your book is launched, have you considered, or has if you even looked into it, is the a mediation, a mediator, is where the lawyers can't get it done themselves, so they hire a mediator, and the mediator comes in and brings both parties together, and you'd be perfect for something such as that.
Oh,
Uh,
well, thank you so much. I do desire that, you know. I desire to, I hadn't thought about it in exactly the way you're saying, but yeah, it
to do that
resonates.
kind of thing. Yeah, right. Yeah, I figured it would.
Well, that's perceptive of you.
Well, it's something that you would do very well. And of course, with the book, now you're toting with the ball.
Yeah. That book, I lead off each chapter with an unsung hero story.
Hmm.
And so then it dives into, use it as a springboard into the chapter material. And so, do you want to hear a bit of the Ripley story?
Sure.
Well, I did research several years back and I learned the story of Ripley and I was shocked. I thought I've lived in Ohio all my life and not known the story of Ripley. And Ripley's a little small town upriver from Cincinnati. But back in the day, 1820s, 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, this was a hotbed for abolition.
Okay.
And there was these connections that you can just never imagine. I mean, unsung heroes galore.
Mhm.
But I thought, I don't understand how I could live in Ohio and not. And so when I learned it, I thought, okay, next time I go to Ohio, I'm going to Ripley. And I did. And when I went, I discovered the quaintness of this beautiful little town. And I just can't believe everything that happened in those days. So the story goes, there's a man named John Rankin who purchased a small home, a little red home. He built it on top of this 500-foot bluff, but he only bought it for one reason, and that is to help slaves across the Ohio River.
Mhm.
And so it's so high up. I mean, it's like a picture to
Mhm.
see that little red house. And you can just well imagine that if you're a slave on the Kentucky side, you can see that little red house up there and have developed a reputation that that is the place to go if you want to safely passage over to the north.
Right.
But once you cross the river, what he would do, though, John Rankin, is place a lantern in the window of the house if it was safe to cross.
Right.
But if it was not safe to cross, he did not put that in the window because there were plenty of slave catchers combing the town on horseback with torches looking for slaves to send them back where they came from. But John Rankin successfully helped 2,000 slaves to freedom that way and never lost one.
Jeez, it's a lot.
And he would never keep a slave more than 2 or 3 hours. He fed them, clothed them, cared for them, and then his sons, which he had 9 of them, took
Boy.
the slave out the back of the property further north on the Underground Railroad. And this was the most prominent Underground Railroad in probably period, is the
Mhm.
Ripley line. And so John Parker, who's a black man who helped slaves in Ripley, he called Ripley the terminus of the Underground Railroad. In fact, derived its name from Ripley, the very term Underground Railroad, because the slave catchers and the slave owners, they think, hey, what happened to my slave? It seems like he disappeared into an underground railroad. That began in 1831. So John Rankin, his life was threatened for doing what he did, but he personified this friendship. Friendship goes beyond someone you've known for many years. I mean, these are people that, okay, you're a slave and you meet this man in one moment of time. This is friendship because of what you bring to that relationship, because they felt like they could trust him. And so he let them in their home. And, I mean, he encountered these slaves. They're trembling with, fear and anxiety for being pursued the way they were. It's unbelievable to think of the stories of these people.
Mhm.
But there's one in particular I'd like to share with you, and that is the story of Eliza. Have you heard that name?
Sure.
Well, John Rankin knew that this young mother and her baby tried to cross the Ohio River and they kept breaking through the ice. And so by the time she got to the other side, she fell exhausted on the bank
Right. Right.
of the north side. And when she looked up, there was a slave catcher. And so his name was Chauncey Shaw. But when he watched her from one side to the other, and he was so impressed with her fight to live for her and her baby that he said, anyone that can do what I just saw you do deserves their freedom. And he
Sure.
pointed to that little red house. He said, go there and you'll get the help that you need. And she did. And she was cared for a couple of hours and taken further north. And then eventually she came back and rescued more family members.
That's great.
But here's the thing about it. And I'll throw this back to you, but John Rankin became acquainted with Harriet Beecher, who lived in Cincinnati, was studying to be a writer at the time. And she visited John Rankin in the little house. And that was 1838 or so, or 9. And she placed this story of the mother and her baby in her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. And of course, Uncle Tom's Cabin became the top selling book of that century next to the Bible.
Wow.
So Eliza is the fictional name
Mhm.
for that mother in her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, but it was based on her experience of meeting John Rankin and visiting Ripley.
Interesting. Seems like there was a song about Eliza. Heard that growing up, and that would fit with that scenario.
It would. I haven't heard that, but yeah, it's a fascinating story.
Yeah. Yeah. I would hope that once you get a hold of people, and with your words, don't let them go. It's a thing where I'll see you tomorrow and I'll call you or whatever. You said, no, we're going to talk some more.
Okay.
At least that worked for me. And
Yeah.
I
Okay.
knew when I needed to be an outlier, and I knew when I was supposed to be real quiet.
Mhm.
And that worked very well for me over a long period of 13, 14 years.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sure. Now, the other virtues that you have, what's your next one that you like?
Well,
That's
let's
heavy.
see. I can't help but think of another story with friendship, Mr. Rogers,
Oh,
So I had a conversation or a visit, like we like to say, with a lady that worked with him for all of those years. Her name is Hedda, and she worked with Fred Rogers for 50, I think 56 years or something like that. And she was with him at the first taping of the first episode in 1966.
mhm.
But, he was able to take this concept of friendship and really build it out, friendship, neighbors, and all of these essential virtues. He actually was able to convey these concepts through a television screen to millions of small children. And so these children believed in him, because he believed in them, right?
Right.
And so I had these conversations with Hedda and learned so much more about his background. Fred was an unsung hero to a lot of people, but Fred had his own unsung heroes, because what a lot of people don't know
Right.
is that behind the scenes, there was a lady, a doctor, Dr. Margaret McFarland, that he met with once per week for the duration of those episodes. Now, they taped almost 900 episodes of
Hmm.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He wrote the scripts for all of them. He also wrote 200 songs for these episodes.
Hmm.
But he never did any of this without consulting with Dr. McFarland first, because she was a renowned child psychologist
Hmm.
and she understood what is good for children. And he didn't ever really want to do what he did creatively without consulting her first. So she was an unsung hero for him, and she didn't want the credit for everything that she did, but she was the counterpart, is what they like to say, for his
Hmm.
creativity. And then he would take the liberty to put that forth in the shows in a creative way. So, he did it through puppets, he did it through music, he did
Right.
it through real
Right.
live visitors that came onto the set, like Mr. McFeely.
Sure.
These were creative touches, but they were rooted and grounded in real concepts that Dr. McFarland understood back in those days. And they met and then they synergized.
Well, it's not hard to synergize that. I had my youngest two kiddos. Now they're 38 and 35, that type of thing. And I remember, they got hooked on Mr. Rogers because I made them sit down and listen to him. And then there were times, whenever I would go in and wake them up, and even my wife, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I got that
Yeah,
rolling in my head.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was his signature, right?
Mhm.
And it's interesting to know that he was so disciplined, Hedda said, he kept his weight at 143 consistently for many, many, many years. I don't know how a person does that. It's like, well, I'd sure like to know how to do that. I mean, 143, but the numbers, 1 is I, 4 is love, U is 3.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's what he did. It was that was interesting. I mean, he was very disciplined with eating and swimming every day, and very fit and disciplined, and had these certain daily
Mhm.
rituals,
Routines.
routines.
Yeah. Mhm.
And he kept his weight at 143. But it always came across the airwaves that he loved those kids and he
Right.
believed in them, and he promoted these kind of virtues, and he had
Right.
all kinds of topics and themes, but they were, like you like to say, integrated.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad for that. I'm glad that it's still around and it's being, it should be perpetual. Um, and I don't use that word very much, but it's a kind of thing that you have no matter where you go and what you do, that, people will be in very high regards of you because you have the type of thing that they're looking for something. And then you'll hit that button again, and there you go. You're off and running.
Yeah, these are the things that endure, right? These are the things
Exactly.
that last. These are the
That's
things
right.
that mean the most to us, because when I need a friend, there's nothing more refreshing than that, right? It's
Yes.
like, okay, this person is actually being a friend to me, and it's like, this is perhaps the most valuable thing that I have going through this trial.
Right. Right.
Friendship is something that really carries the day
Sure.
in many of our toughest situations.
Mhm. Well, let me ask you this: on launch day or launch week, uh, where's your book going to be? Will it be on Amazon? Will it be in Barnes and Noble? Lots of things.
Well, it will be on Amazon. I will have a print copy and of course, an online version. So I'll have it both ways. But as far as distribution, I mean, we'll see, potentially it could be
Right.
in Barnes and Noble, but some of this remains to happen over time. But yeah,
Sure.
I'll have a print version available and an online version, and it's getting closer.
That's good. And it's not easy waiting on it getting closer.
Right. It's not. Yeah, it's
It's not.
more involved than it appears on the surface, right?
That's right. Well, let me sign off to my listeners and sign off with you. I'm always happy to have my listeners come in and say hello. And my numbers, they tell me my numbers on YouTube are pretty good. And I've only done it for 4 months, I think.
That's fantastic. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you. The listeners searching for integrity, and the way you'll know this one because the so long and happy trails to all, and in the end, we'll see you again.